Anyone who believes that economic growth can go on forever in a finite world is either a madman or an economist. In the long term, the economy and the environment are the same. If it is unenvironmental, it is uneconomical. That is the rule of nature. Wendell Berry, one of the best thinkers and writers of our time, makes this observation. We have lived by the assumption that what was good for us would be good for the world. We have been wrong. We have to change our lives so that it will be possible to live by the contrary assumption that what is good for the world is good for us. And that requires that we make the effort to know the world and learn what is good for it. We must learn to cooperate with its processes and to yield to its limits. It is only the condition of humility and reverence before the world that our species will be able to remain in it. In the next few minutes, we will show you some of the ways we have been trying to get to know the world. Although we are a long way from knowing our world, as sharp old Mr. Fox knows his. First, I'd like to introduce ourselves. This is my wife, Chris, and I'm Doug Tompkins. Between us, we've created 4 nonprofit conservation and environmental foundations and have a group of family farms in Chile and Argentina. Our work for nearly 20 years now has been focused on 4 main areas of activity. First, saving of biodiversity by establishing new strictly protected areas. We have been fortunate that through our foundations we have purchased well over 2 million acres for preservation of public access parkland and the creation of 4 national parks plus 9 other projects in Chile and Argentina. Second, ecological restoration. We now have years of land restoration experience in varied ecosystems from the savannas of northeastern Argentina to fragile grasslands in Patagonia. The third focus of our work is agroecology, where good organic farming methods produce conservation benefits as a consequence of production. Our fourth primary interest is supporting citizen activism and public education. Ironically, this observation was made by a prominent politician himself, who said, "Intense, incessant citizen pressure is the only thing that will save us. We must assume that we are surrounded by rapacious developers, callous industrialists, inept public agencies, and insensitive politicians. And our only salvation is in our own 2 hands." Yes, we do need a new economy, yet one founded on thrift and care, on saving and conserving, not one based on excess and waste. For this, we must refocus our values and, like our gardens, prepare our soils before we plant. Here are some of the values that underlie our work and our vision for a future green society. Beauty as a basic. Aesthetics inform all the things that we do. The words of Sandra Lubarsky point us in the right direction regarding aesthetics. She says, "It is the absence of beauty that has confounded our efforts on behalf of sustainability." If the word sustainability means something more than mere survival and perseverance, then we must speak of beauty. For beauty is the value that is intrinsic to the ecological paradigm. We name as beautiful those things that are life-sustaining and life-enhancing. Babies, bodies of water, flowering plants that promise nourishment, affiliations that bring us to life. And they are among the very things we naturally describe as beautiful. Likewise, in our human environments, we demonstrate a preference for material forms that somehow embody aliveness. Beauty is no mere sentimental, idiosyncratic human effect. It is our way of describing our encounters with vitality, with life-affirmative patterns and relationships. It is our shorthand for those experiences that exceed survival and enable us to flourish. At the base of life itself is an intrinsic desire not only for quantity of life, but also for lives of quality. This desire lies at the heart of our work to save the world. In considering how beauty and the economy relate, we should heed the words of Josiah Stamp, who said, "Indifference to the aesthetic will in the long run lessen the economic product. Attention to the aesthetic will increase economic welfare." Pure water we see as a basic social responsibility. We have nearly 100% pure water on our farms and around our land conservation projects. This is almost a luxury in today's world, and the trends worldwide are negative. Although our terrestrial sweetwater may be 100% pure, our marine systems are now beginning to feel the contamination of industrial aquaculture. Our own rules for the managing of our lands are zero contamination and the social obligation to keep all water pure. Just imagine if everyone made such a commitment to pure water and then lived up to it. We'd live in an entirely different world. Care for soils. Practicing the law of return. Healthy soils are every bit as important as pure water. Some years ago at a farm we had bought in Entre Rios, Argentina, we found this kind of erosion, which had to be stopped at all costs. And it can be costly. Opening up ground by plowing or disking is dangerous. Perhaps plowing or disking once, only to establish pastures like this, which then, when well managed, can actually build soils. For us, composting from only on-farm inputs, complete nutrient recycling, and soil building are the foundations for a healthy farm, a healthy community, and ultimately a prosperous society. For in the long run, there will be no agriculture, no community, and no economy without healthy soils. Meaningful work. Agrarianism as a practice. One definition of meaningful work is doing something in life that does not contribute to the degradation of soils, or to the extinction of species, or increase climate change. Some may say that does not leave us many options, but there are abundant opportunities to find meaningful work, including, of course, good farming. Reducing our ecological footprints is the fundamental challenge of our time. Imagination, goodwill, a love for all nature, and care for our own human societies, if carefully directed, leads to meaningful work, and therefore to a meaningful life, and contributes to slowing the loss of biodiversity. Schooling and education. Passing the cultural blueprint forward to the next generation. As Mark Twain once remarked, don't let your schooling get in the way of your education. And then there is the question of what kind of schooling and what kind of education. Our children in the next generations will require an education that will give them the worldview and the skills of systemic analysis to discover and reverse the root causes of climate change and the extinction crisis, the mother of all crises. And within that systemic analysis, we must demystify the dogma that ever more high technology will magically produce solutions to the crisis of extinction and climate change. Until we have adequately taught this to our children, or they have learned it themselves, we are destined to only deepen these related crises. Local energy, renewables and contemporary sunlight, or commonly known as solar power. The world and its economy turn on energy, yet the real question is, do we have an energy shortage or too large a demand? Ever larger development projects, such as megadams, irreversibly alter watersheds. Massive and sometimes thousands of kilometer-long power lines disfigure the landscapes, magnifying the impact of the dams. Techno-saviors attempt to replace obsolete technologies with new ones, like industrial wind turbines. The visual pollution and other impacts they create are accepted as another price of progress. Desperate measures to keep the industrial growth monster alive, like increased nuclear power, are being discussed in many nations. All of this to feed the insatiable appetite for growth and the purported benefits of the globalized economy. But this is a dead-end street, and we must rethink our course ahead and look to a local economy based on low-tech, yet what we may call advanced technologies. Energy should be produced locally and not shipped enormous distances. We need small-scale hydro to keep river systems healthy, and small-scale wind energy that keeps visual pollution to a minimum and is safe for birds, and a reawakening to the real meaning of horsepower. We will have to reorient our economies to use only non-polluting, local, small-scale energy sources that do not diminish biodiversity, change the climate, or reduce beauty in our lives. As James Kunstler says, in regards to those hyper-high-tech energy technologies you see pictured here, the single greatest impediment in our collective imaginations right now is our ridiculous obsession of keeping all the cars running by other means. Architecture and design. Respect for tradition and regional style. We believe that good design is one of the primary ingredients of good land stewardship and healthy communities. And to us, good design requires careful ecological thinking. From this comes its own evident beauty. It should be energy efficient, functional, and use local materials. And to carry forward cultural and historical patterns. And to harmonize constructions and structures into their settings. And to minimize the changes that buildings, roads, fences, water towers, etc. make to the original beauty of each place they are imposed. To also provide easy, comfortable, and pleasant living and working conditions for people as well for our domestic animals. Conservation as a consequence of production. One of our principal objectives is that our farms produce in such a way that conservation becomes a byproduct of good production techniques. We call this conservation as a consequence of production. To begin with, good production starts with farm design and layout. One must know where good soils lie, how water flows and drains, where woods and water courses should be, and which areas are important for wildlife. Once designed, special care must be taken to maintain maximum ecological integrity to the landscapes. Beauty, as always, is the basic notion, both in farm design, upkeep, in crop and field work, and the end product. Products are organic, tasty, healthy, and nicely packaged. Some of our efforts go into ethnobotany, helping to keep these chill-away heirloom potatoes from going extinct. When you are seeing this, you begin to know that you have a healthy farm or ranch. And sometimes you find this kind of picture, the blend of production and biodiversity conservation. The whole idea is to make production and conservation compatible and biologically sustainable, the only kind of sustainability there is. Animal husbandry, the care, health, and improving of the genetics of our domestic animals. On all of our farms and ranches, the humane treatment of our animals is a prerequisite. Organic management standards, as well as our own improved techniques, such as no dogs harassing sheep or cattle, being on foot in corrals, with no horses, and walking quietly without shouting gives our animals tranquil and healthy lives. We seek to constantly improve the genetics of each breed, for better birth and survival rates, weight gain, and animal health, and the quality of wool and meat. Besides this, we can pass down to the younger generation the notion of care and respect for our farm animals that carries over to care and respect for wildlife. And then we must learn to live and let our livestock live with predators if we want to keep the ecosystem healthy. Handmade and local, artisan and not industrial. If we ever hope to build the so-called sustainable economy, we're going to have to make an about-face from the global economy to a local economy. This will mean that we will have to reacquaint ourselves with the history of the products and energy we use in daily life. This also means we will have to know the story behind each thing we use, each log we burn, each cup we drink from, each fence we build, each sweater we wear, each brick we lay. In the next few pictures, you will see some of our house interiors. Look closely and almost everything is handmade and local. We know where almost every item came from, who made them, and much of their ecological footprints. We have used local craftsmen almost exclusively, preferring recycled materials for our buildings and furnishings. And for the most part, we know the history of our products that otherwise in an industrial world are largely unknown to the buyer and user. In this way, we are steps closer to the next economy and on our way towards self-sufficiency, food security, and even perhaps the elusive sustainability. Restoration and reforestation we see as the work of the future. If there ever was a growth industry, restoration is it. Humans have so damaged the planet that everywhere one turns there are opportunities. Universities around the world now offer courses and careers in restoration ecology. We are into restoration full-time. In southern Chile, we have created a thriving native species nursery to supply reforestation projects. We are growing and planting the seed stock for future forests that will stand tall 1,000 years from now. We even restore old garbage dumps and gravel pits. Anything. It can be challenging. Can you imagine what it takes to fix this mess? Just for the fun of it, as you travel around, anywhere, start looking for landscapes that need restoration. And you will get our point here very quickly. There are centuries of meaningful work ahead for people who love restoration and who love the earth. Conservation and parklands, preserving wildness and allowing evolution to continue to unfold. If there is one area where our efforts stand out among conservation foundations, it is in the creation of large parklands and nature sanctuaries. It's no accident that 3 of our family foundations are dedicated to land conservation, primarily for biodiversity protection. In the past almost 25 years, through these entities we have successfully preserved, at a very high level of biological conservation, over 2 million acres of our own lands and another 850,000 acres of additional state land. Within that number are 13 projects, 4 national parks completed already, 2 of which are in southern Chile, the Corcovado National Park in the Palena province of the Chilean Lake District, and the Yendagaya National Park on Chilean Tierra del Fuego. Then in Argentina, the first coastal national park, Monte Leon, in the Santa Cruz province of Patagonia. And in northern Argentina, we played a dominant role in the recent formation of a new park, the Impenetrable National Park in the Chaco province. Then, in 2013, we donated a spectacular new section for the expansion of the Perito Moreno National Park, also in Santa Cruz province of Argentina. Back in 1992, we collaborated with the Cat Survival Trust to form the provincial park of Piñalito in the Misiones province, Argentina. Then large acreage has been slowly acquired in the rich and biodiverse Ibarra wetland savannas of Corrientes province in northeastern Argentina. This threatened and impacted area is now being restored in large-scale sectors, with wildlife numbers improving dramatically. One day we hope it will become Argentina's largest national park. Also, we are now well advanced in the work to create the future Patagonia National Park in Aysén region of southern Chile. This park will be one of the crown jewels in the Chilean park system, larger and every bit as spectacular as Torres del Paine National Park further south. The park will be donated as a turnkey project with all the public access infrastructure built and in place to make it a world-class national park by any standards. This park is envisioned to join with the already formed Patagonia National Park right across the border in Argentina as the first transboundary park in South America. Then we have Pumalín Park at 750,000 acres, a Yosemite-scale nature sanctuary managed by one of our foundations as a public access park but under a private initiative. Within the next few years, it too will be donated to the Chilean state and join the national park system. Presently, 5 new national parks, including Pumalín and Patagonia, are threading their way through the labyrinths of government to join the impressive network of Chilean national parks. Wildlife in our life, sharing the planet with other creatures. Naturalist Lois Chrysler once wrote that wilderness without wildlife is just scenery. Behind all of our land conservation work stands the reality of a global extinction crisis, which, as I mentioned earlier, is what we consider the mother of all crises. By any measure or any projection, human civilization cannot exist if it is cutting off the limbs of the tree of life upon which all life depends. The biodiversity extinction crisis is nothing short of a slow-motion process for our own extinction. Whether in the air, in the water, or on the ground, species of every ecosystem around the world are going extinct, not by the day, but by the hour. The big question is, if global climate change has finally been recognized for what it is and implies, why hasn't the extinction crisis been seen also for what it is and implies? Climate change is merely one of the driving factors behind unraveling ecosystems and the loss of biodiversity. This yellow cardinal is almost extinct, that is, almost gone. So is this white mule deer. One needs to stop and reflect deeply that today we see this marvelous creature, a result of billions of years of evolution, almost gone. The giant river otter, eliminated from most of its habitat and almost gone forever. And now extremely rare mountain viscacha, almost gone forever. The tall and elegant maned wolf, almost gone forever. The giant anteater, gone in vast percentage of its original habitat, almost gone forever. The strange-tailed tyrant, almost gone forever. America's largest and most emblematic large carnivore, extirpated from much of its former range and threatened in large areas, and if the trends continue, it too will be gone forever. And the list goes on and on. It's worth reflecting deeply on why we find ourselves in this slow-motion catastrophe we call the extinction crisis, and ponder deeply if we do not need another economy. An economy whose intrinsic logic is to be thrifty and not overconsumptive, to be conservative and not wasteful, to be restorative and non-toxic to these wild and wonderful creatures that are our fellow members in the biotic community. Will we learn to live with the idea that what is good for the world will be good for us? Quickly, we must learn and teach our children how to share the planet with other species. For our economy depends on biodiversity, our lives depend on biodiversity, and our future depends on biodiversity. Our own ethical self-respect depends on how well we treat the non-human world, and certainly our collective behavior is driving species of every type extinct, often without even knowing they existed. The economy must be structured such that its inherent logic leads us out of this difficult-to-see and understand crisis of biodiversity, that the health of nature is the health of all. There is only one sustainability, that of the whole. We need a stable state and eco-local economy that will include all the rest of the creatures on the planet. That, yes, that is the next economy.
Thank you.